What is up, NFL fans, and welcome back to another episode of the NFL Whip Around. I am Jeff Hartman, joined as always by Coach Kevin Smith. Coach, what is up?
What's happening, Jeff? I just took notice of your Steelers Super Bowl champs T-shirt you're wearing there. I used to have that one back in the day.
I actually have two of these.
Okay.
2005 was a great year for me. I just was like, I'm getting two shirts because
Nice.
Lord knows when this is going to happen again. It happened a few years later, but that's neither here nor there. Coach, week 6 is in the books. It's hard to believe we're already entering week 7. Let's talk about the most surprising storylines after 6 weeks. So here are the options. These are what you came up with. That Baker Mayfield is the leading candidate to be the most valuable player in the NFL. The Indianapolis Colts are leading the AFC South, looking darn good doing it too. And that the Ravens are 1-5. So out of those three potential storylines, what is the most surprising to you after week 6?
I love the Baker Mayfield story because he's a guy who I think has worked his way back, not just as a quarterback, but also really as a leader, a player, a persona, an unlikable guy. I think maybe when he came out of college, pretty arrogant, etc. But now seems to have gotten the professional game. Great story. Colts are a great story. But if the question is what's the most surprising, the Ravens at 1-5. There's nobody in America heading into this season that would have been able to tell you back in August that they saw this coming. Obviously, the injury to Lamar Jackson's impactful, and they've had injuries across the board. But I think the thing that stands out is with or without the injuries, the defense has been spectacularly bad. And that's just not something you associate with the Ravens.
So to run through the options here, Baker Mayfield was a first-round draft pick. He was just with a really bad organization. I'm not going to go there, although I'm really impressed by his play in Tampa. The Colts, I still don't want to crown them just yet. I want to wait a second before I jump. I got to agree with you. The Ravens being 1-5. And if you would have said to me before the season started, Jeff, we're going to head into week 7, the Ravens have a bye, and they're 1-5. What happened? I'm going to say that Lamar Jackson has been hurt the entire season. It's only been the last 2 games, though. People need to remember that, too. I mean, they've only had one win, and that was with Lamar Jackson at the helm. They are banged up. I want to give credence to that. Roquan Smith has been out of the lineup. Ronnie Staley has been in and out of the lineup. Kyle Hamilton's been in and out of the lineup. They are banged up. But, Coach, I look at one play, and I don't want to dive too much into the specifics of the L.A. game on Sunday. They ran 4 plays to Derrick Henry on the goal line and did not score at the end of the half. That's incredible. What is going on in Baltimore?
Yeah, I mean, it feels as though there is, for lack of a better term, man, they've lost their mojo. I just can tell you, man, from being around football teams for a very, very long time, sometimes there's just this unquantifiable feel about a team where, when things are going your way and you've got a good locker room, you just feel like, hey, we're going to get it done. You don't know how, you don't know exactly in what way, shape, or form. And the Ravens are the opposite of that. I mean, I've unfortunately also been in locker rooms where that part is true, where you just can't quite get it together and it starts to snowball on you. And I look at, I'm not trying to make this an exact equivalent, but look at what happened to Penn State. And, here comes Penn State as a championship contender that spent a lot of NIL money to bring back guys, keep them out of the transfer portal, keep them from going pro because they believed they had a chance to win the national championship. And then they have a tough loss to Oregon and it spirals out of control to the point where James Franklin gets fired. I'm not saying John Harbaugh is going to get fired, although you've mentioned maybe that might not be out of the realm of possibility.
Well, that's according to the Ravens fan base. Now, like I said, I live in Maryland. You hear it all the time. I was talking to people the other day, and Harbaugh needs to go. The message is stale. And I'm like, well, Pittsburgh fans say that about Tomlin every year. Yeah. I don't think they're going to go that route. But I will say this. So while that is the most surprising storyline to both of us, I'm going to go on a ledge here and say that I think the Ravens will be in the playoff discussion and potential contention by season's end just based on their schedule. Listen to what they have after the bye week. Lamar Jackson is supposed to be back. Roquan Smith is supposed to be back. They have the Bears at home, the Dolphins on the road, the Vikings on the road, and the Browns on the road. I got to be honest, Coach. I see 4 victories there, don't you?
Yeah, I think you need to get 4 wins there. If they go 3-1, Now you're 4-6, and your margin for error is really slim.
Yeah.
You got to figure you probably need to win 10 games in the AFC to get to the playoffs.
Agreed.
So if they don't go 4-0, that means they've only given themselves enough wiggle room for one loss, and they're still going to have to slog through most of the division games, and they're going to play some top teams near the end of the season as well. So yes, that's a huge 4-game stretch.
Because after that, after the Browns game on the road, they host the Jets, host the Bengals, they host the Steelers. They go back to the Bengals, then they have New England, Green Bay, and Pittsburgh to finish out the regular season. So if you were to guess right now, are the Ravens even in contention? I'm not going to ask you to predict whether they make the postseason. Are they even in contention by season's end?
Who knows what's going to happen from an injury standpoint?
True.
But the schedule sets up so that if they can get right physically and mentally after the bye week, their season's not over yet.
Yeah. As a coach, how difficult is it to get your mojo back? Is it just one game? Is it just one game where you go out and light someone up and then you're like, all right, we're getting that swagger back? In your opinion, as a football coach, how difficult is that?
No, it can turn very, very abruptly.
Yeah.
You just have to. Confidence is a weird thing, man. It allows players to do things that they're capable of. And believe in themselves. And when you get 53 guys on that same page, it can steamroll. So, yeah, one big win could really turn this around for Baltimore.
All right, let's go to our next topic. The Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, they win convincingly. And that was against a very hot Detroit team. This was at Arrowhead. A giant Brian Branch is going off, hitting everybody after the game with Juju Smith-Schuster. It was a crazy finish to that game. Kansas City's won 3 of 4 after an 0-2 start. In your opinion, Coach, are they once again the team to beat in the AFC?
Yeah, we keep trying to bury the Chiefs.
I would love to bury the Chiefs.
We keep trying, but between this show and our football buffet with Rob Guerrero, man, we keep trying to drive the stake through, and it just won't take. So, I mean, look at the AFC, right? Buffalo plays on Monday night. We're recording before their result, but they've obviously been very good, but they don't seem like a dominant team right now. Who's the dominant team in the AFC? You can't say the Steelers. No. You can't say the Colts. You can't say the Broncos. I mean, Buffalo is probably top to bottom right now, the best team in the AFC, but Kansas City is the team you don't want to face. And they're going to get some of their better players back. I mean, they had it rolling. They looked like a team. I heard a quote from Mahomes. And sometimes you take it with a grain of salt because you're like, oh, well, he's saying the politically correct thing. But I think he might be honest. He said, we feel better right now at 2-3, given everything that we've endured and gone through this year, than we did last year at the end of the season when we were heading to the Super Bowl. And I think what he means is he just thinks that, like, projecting forward, they see this team in really good shape. And so that's kind of scary for the rest of the AFC.
The Chiefs have a bullseye on them like the Patriots did when Tom Brady was there in that whole era. So they're always that team to beat. But I'll say this about the AFC. There is no front runner. It feels like there's a handful of teams, and may the best team that's playing the best at the end of the season win, and that's who's going to be granted home playoff games and potentially a bye and all that. But we talked about the Ravens schedule. The Chiefs schedule is completely opposite. I think they have some really tough games coming up, not necessarily this week with the Raiders. But then they have a bye week after that. Actually, no, they don't. They play on Monday night against the Commanders, and that's at Arrowhead. So they have 2 straight home games. Then they go to Buffalo. Then they have to travel to Denver. Then they host the Colts. Then they go to Dallas to play the Cowboys. They have the Texans, Chargers, Titans, and then Broncos and Raiders. That's not an easy schedule. And like you said, when it comes to the health of a team, who knows what's going to happen? But they are going to get Rashid Rice back. He comes off his suspension this week. That's another weapon. Was it as simple as they just didn't have their full allotment of talent? Because once they started to get some speed back on the outside, things started to change.
And they started to lose some of those one-score games finally. I think they'd won like 17 straight one-score games, which is an NFL record. And then their 3 losses this year have all been by 1 score or less. So sometimes it's just as simple as those 4 or 5 plays that usually determine the outcome of a game. Do you win those plays or not?
Yeah. I got to ask you this question. After Sunday Night Football and all the the scrum and the fighting that happened afterwards. I didn't realize this. I went back to the box score and checked. And maybe I'm going to ask you how often this happens, that a team is not flagged one time in an entire game. Now, the Detroit Lions were only flagged 4 times, and that's accepted penalties and all that stuff. So it wasn't like there were a ton of flags. This wasn't the Steelers and Browns where it was like a flag fest. How rare is that, in your opinion, that a team does not get penalized at all?
It's exceptional. We could probably look it up, but it's exceptionally rare.
Okay.
How often does it happen in a season? I can't imagine it happens more than 2 or 3 games in an entire season where our team has no flags.
Let me just put it this way. It doesn't help with these narratives that are always circulating amongst NFL fans that the NFL is always looking after Kansas City and they want to make sure they're competitive and they want to make sure they're in it, whether it's because of Patrick Mahomes, whether it's because of the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift nonsense. It doesn't matter. Those don't help. And so we haven't talked about officials much yet this year, Coach, but I'm going to bring that up as just like, hey, let's keep an eye on this. This is very interesting. All right, let's go to our next topic. Kansas City's opponent in last year's Super Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles, boy, they're trending in the wrong direction. They got rocked by the Giants in New York, actually New Jersey, on Thursday night. Phillies dropped 2 straight games going back to when they lost to Denver at home, and their offense is a mess. Do you think Eagles fans should be panicking about the state of their team?
First of all, let me tell you, Thursday night is not a pretty night in the southern New Jersey,
the
Philadelphia
Phillies.
Metro area, as the Phillies lost on a brutal error by their pitcher. And then the Eagles got shellacked by the rival Giants on Thursday night. But winning a Super Bowl does take away some angst. So, the locals were not happy, but they weren't as crazy as Philly fans often are. But to the question, Philly's got some issues. They've got some issues on offense. Kevin Patullo, the first-time offensive coordinator, he's under some heavy criticism. There's a lot of talk about, do the Eagles need to not necessarily replace him, but do they need to bring on a senior advisor? Like Morty Morenweg served that role for Philadelphia a couple years ago. Do they need an experienced veteran to come in and help him with the game planning and the play calling and things like that? You may see that move. The thing is, we mentioned Derrick Henry not being able to get into the end zone. Philly just can't get the run game going. I mean, Obviously defenses are planning for them a little differently this year than they did a year ago, but with not being able to get Saquon Barkley going and then with the struggles to get A.J. Brown the ball down the field, they've got some issues.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game on Thursday night last week, Saquon Barkley has 12 carries for 58 yards. That's a 4.8 average. That's a pretty good average, but they total 73 yards as a team. Like, this is the complete antithesis of what we saw last year with Philadelphia. And Jalen Hurts, I'll ask you, the last 2 games has not looked very comfortable. And I don't know if he's feeling the pressure from his receivers, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. I mean, Devontae Smith, obviously, neither of them is like blowing up in front of the media and saying, I want this, that, or the other. But Dallas Goedert was the leading receiver with 110 yards on 9 catches. What's your overall take? Where do they go from here?
I do think it's a problem when people start to complain about not getting the ball and that stuff leaks out into the public. I mean, A.J. Brown did put out some cryptic tweets or Instagram, social media somewhere about not getting the ball enough. And then the very next week, they give the ball to Saquon Barkley 12 times and they throw it a ton. Do they do that to try to appease A.J. Brown and keep the locker room together? I don't know. I mean, that seems pretty weak if you're the organization. That like, hey, this guy complained, so let's throw him the ball a lot. I don't know if that's a reality or not. Either way, it just feels like Philly is combustible right now. That they need to fix it fast or it could blow up on them.
If you're tailoring to A.J. Brown the way you just described, you are talking about an unbelievably fragile locker room. A locker room that, like you said, just won a Super Bowl last year. I mean, come on, guys. Like, where is that confidence? Where's that swagger? Let's take a look at what the Eagles have coming up. This week they go to Minnesota to play the Vikings. Not sure if J.J. McCarthy will be back there. They are coming off their bye week, so we'll see about that. Then they have another matchup with the Eagles, this time in Philly. Then they have to go to Green Bay. They host the Lions, at the Cowboys, host the Bears, Chargers. It is not going to be easy. They have their final 3 games: Washington, Buffalo, Washington. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to make of the Eagles anymore. And I was always the guy last year and even the year before saying I'm not a believer. This year I was a believer. Now I'm questioning myself. Yeah. Where do you stand on them moving forward?
Well, I think back to a year ago, heading into their bye, they were 2-2. They'd lost 2 out of 3. All of these same conversations were happening. This is broken, that's broken, the Eagles stink, blah, blah, blah. And then coming out of the bye, they ripped off 18 out of 19 and won the Super Bowl. So who knows, right? I mean, they are talented enough to be able, if they get it all together, to pivot and become a dominant team again. Whether they can, obviously that remains to be seen.
All right, let's go to our next topic. The Pittsburgh Steelers. That's right, the team that we like, the team that we cover closely. The Steelers lead the AFC North at 4-1 after they dominated the Browns on Sunday, and Aaron Rodgers is actually playing some good football. Should Rodgers play, and the fact the college quarterback class has underperformed so far this season, prompt the Steelers to try to bring Aaron Rodgers back in 2026? I'm interested to hear what you think about this, Coach.
Yeah, this was, everybody kind of thought this is a 1-year deal. Rodgers said, 1 year, man, I'm here for a year. But he's playing very good football. And more importantly, Aaron Rodgers looks like he's having fun. Aaron Rodgers looks like a guy who has found the joy in football again after 2 miserable seasons in New York. So it all depends on, one, what's his mindset? How does the rest of this season play out? Still a long way to go. But if he continues to have a successful season, and if the Steelers are successful, it would be very tempting for them to try to bring him back. I have been completely underwhelmed by the college crop of quarterbacks. I mean, everybody talked about this as being maybe an historic group, but one after the next is just playing under expectations. I mean, Arch Manning's going to go back to school, and rightfully so. Drew Aller's now out for the year. Lenora Sellers has been good, but he's been dinged up, so it's hard to get a read on him. Cade Klubnik's been bad. The Nussmeier kid at LSU has been he looks like maybe an NFL backup right now. There's not a guy. I mean, the kid from Oregon, the Moore kid from Oregon looks dynamic, but also looks like a guy that has a big learning curve when he gets to the NFL. The Mateer kid from Oklahoma, it looks like maybe a little bit more of a running type quarterback. There's not a dude who right now in college football who I would say, oh, that's a guy you should target in round 1 if you need a franchise quarterback. And if that's the case, again, long way to go, somebody could emerge. But if this narrative stays consistent, where Rodgers is playing really good football and enjoying it, and the college crop doesn't develop, why wouldn't you try to talk him back for another year if you were the Steelers?
And he's made some comments, maybe even in passing. There was a situation off the field in Dublin where he was walking off and he goes, I'll be back next year. And everyone's like, wait a second, he say next year? Cam Hayward has alluded to him potentially returning next year. I don't think he's against it. I think it all depends on how he feels about the team, if the team is trending in the right direction. If he feels like he has a legitimate shot to win a Super Bowl, I think that he absolutely will entertain coming back and being a member of the Steelers. And even if the Steelers do draft a quarterback in the first round of next year's draft, if they like a player enough, it makes even more sense to have him back because then he can help that young quarterback. But let's go back to the college quarterbacks for a second. The Steelers took Will Howard in the 6th round of this past year's draft. We didn't get to see him in the preseason, but they're getting a good look on him. He's on IR right now. Do you think there's any chance the Steelers will be like, look, if we could bring Aaron Rodgers back, let's just roll with Will Howard as the backup or Mason Rudolph. Let's keep the quarterback room the same. We didn't get to see Will Howard. Or any of these quarterbacks, is Will Howard from what you saw at Ohio State before he entered the draft, would he rank amongst them?
You and I both know the reality about college quarterbacks. Like if you don't get a guy in the top half of the first round, the odds are very heavy that you won't find a franchise quarterback.
Right.
That suggests Will Howard might not be that guy. Now, that said, it does happen. It does happen. And if Will Howard's got the opportunity for a year or maybe 2 to learn from Aaron Rodgers, then maybe they got the guy they like. But again, the draft next year is in Pittsburgh. Yep. The Steelers have a ton of draft capital. They've got the pieces, even if they have a good year, which so far they are, and they're drafting in, let's say, the mid-20s. They still have enough draft capital to move up fairly high and get their guy. So I mean that could be a reality too. You could do both. You could bring Rodgers back, but also say, hey man, if we can get up to number 10 overall, there's a guy we really like in that spot who we think can be our future QB.
Let's go back to Rodgers for a second. Is there any part of his game that gives you pause right now? And, we've seen a lot of him. He's definitely not as mobile as he once was. That happens as you get older. But in terms of, between the ears is still top notch. But what about his arm? All of the stuff that he brings, those tangible things that we can see. What do you like, or what is there anything that's missing?
Well, he doesn't have the deep ball that he once did. We saw him try to throw one up to DK Metcalf on a double move yesterday, about 50 yards down the field that he threw off his back foot. That's a throw in his younger years that he could have put on a dime 55 yards down the field, and it kind of fluttered up into the air and ended as an incompletion. The explosive plays the Steelers generated on Sunday were all designed plays. They didn't happen organically. They were shot plays. It was a double move to Metcalf that they did hit for a touchdown. It was a really beautifully designed play action to Darnell Washington on the first play of the game that went for 36 yards. Rodgers, I don't know if the Steelers can protect him well enough to let him sit into the pocket and allow for those longer developing shots down the field to occur. And then B, even if they do, I don't know if he's got that part of his game anymore. But obviously in what they're constructing for him, the results have been excellent.
Steelers are 4-1. You haven't had a murderer's row schedule, but they're doing what they should do against teams, and they have a tough one coming up on Thursday night against Cincinnati in Week 7. Let's go to our final topic here. We're now 6 weeks into the regular season. This is the window where you start seeing coaches get fired. Who's your leading candidate to be the first to go? Oh, this is low-hanging fruit, Coach.
This is a tough, as a fellow coach, I don't ever like to entertain this conversation, but it's a reality. It won't be Brian Dable. No. Did you? If you watched on Thursday night, Brian Dable was running around hugging and kissing Giants. My God, he was hugging Jackson Dart like Jackson Dart just pulled him out of a burning building, And I think he recognizes, hey man, these guys are saving my job right now.
Absolutely.
The Giants look completely reinvigorated. On the other hand, Mike McDaniel down there in South Florida, I don't know. I think it's just a matter of time. What I don't know if you saw Tua Tagovailoa's comments.
Yes.
But those were pretty damning.
Yeah, that's the low-hanging fruit. Like when he says like the leadership of the team and players aren't showing up for meetings, like, oh my gosh, like that's shots fired across the bow there. Yep. It's only a matter of time. I want to ask you about Aaron Glenn. The Jets lose to the Broncos over in London 13-11. And that's not even the best part about this game. The best part about the game is that Justin Fields throws for 45 yards. If you take off the sack yardage, he has minus 10 yards throwing. I've never seen that before, Coach. Aaron Glenn is 0-6. I never would have thought that the Jets would pull the rug out from underneath him. You got to have that discussion, don't you?
26 pass attempts. 26 pass attempts for minus 10 yards. That's almost impossible. I think that we talked about the Eagles maybe needing to bring in a senior advisor for the offense. Jets need to do the same thing. Aaron Glenn I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but Aaron Glenn turned the offense over to a first-time coordinator. And that does not appear to be working out very well. If you bring in Aaron Glenn, you got to give him more than one season, I would think, if you're New York, especially with the way that they just turn things over. But if you go 0-17, I don't think they're going to go 0-17, but if you do, if you continue to look like the tire fire that they looked like in London, then it may be tempting to move on. You got to get the locker room right. As long as the locker room is with Aaron Glenn, I think he's okay. But if you start seeing the fallout that you see in some other places when it goes bad, he could be in trouble.
All right, give me some dark horse candidates here. Give me a coach or two that you could see getting the axe at some point this season, not right now, that no one is talking about. Like Callahan in Tennessee, that's obvious. Give me someone no one saw. I've got two in the back of my head here. I want to see if we're thinking on the same wavelength. Yeah,
Dallas, you always have to think about the Cowboys because Jerry Jones is pretty volatile. And, Schottenheimer's a first-year coach, handpicked by the owner, but they had a bad loss to Carolina. They've given up over 400 yards in 4 consecutive games. If they can't fix their defense, they're not going to win a lot of football games. And you could easily replace the DC, but you could also see Jerry Jones moving on from Brian Callahan or Schottenheimer. I mean, that would be one, I think, that jumps to mind. Would Vegas part ways with Pete Carroll if it went bad? You know, he's 74 years old. He's an easy guy to move on from. And you got Chip Kelly there too, so you could turn it over to Chip Kelly for the final 5 or 6 games if it went real bad. And those are 2 names that I would just consider.
Dark horse candidates. People would be stunned if Lamar comes back, Roquan comes back, they're all there and they still keep losing. I could see the Ravens parting ways with John Harbaugh. I could see it. That's a dark horse candidate. I don't expect it, but I wouldn't be stunned. And if the Eagles continue a downward trend, if there's a team out there that I think, and a coach that I've never really understood what he does, I never understand his role within this scheme, Nick Sirianni could be a scapegoat. And you know it. You're around Philly. You know that Philly fans would love it. It doesn't matter that he won a Super Bowl last year. They would be all about it. What are your thoughts on those two?
Well, I will say this for Sirianni. Jeffrey Lurie is said to really like him, and that matters a lot. Now, Harbaugh, you're closer to that situation than I am. That would be stunning to me. That just simply because of how consistently good Baltimore's been, to not allow him to come back from a difficult season would be shocking. So, yeah, I mean, dark horse, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's finish this up as we always do with a player profile. You want to talk about Kamani? Is it Vidal?
Vidal, yeah. Kamani Vidal.
Go ahead, Coach. Wax poetic.
I was on my call sheet podcast on Monday morning. I gave listeners a multiple choice question. Does Kamani Vidal A, play offensive line, B, defensive line? The answer is running back. He's a running back. But I like these stories for profiles because here this guy is. He's a 6th round draft pick out of Troy University of the Chargers. Got into a couple games last year, but for the most part has been a practice squad guy. He's on the practice squad this year, but then they suffer injuries to Najee Harris and then Omarion Hampton, their 2 bell cow running backs, and they call him up from the practice squad. And what's he do on Sunday? He goes out and he runs for 124 yards and helps them knock off the Dolphins. Now, I don't know, will that be it for him? Is that his one shining moment in the NFL? Or because Hampton and Harris are both going to be on the shelf for a little while, might this guy suddenly emerge in a run-friendly Jim Harbaugh offense as a legit play? We've seen it happen before. We've seen guys kind of come out of nowhere and become, reliable running backs in the NFL. So I'm rooting for him. I like these stories.
Yeah, I mean, you think about your Rico Dowdles. No one knows who that player is unless he's drafted by your team and you've watched him play. Some would even say even Tony Pollard's out there. They do exist. They have really good seasons, and whether he stays in LA based on the players that they've acquired, who knows? But sometimes all it takes is 1 or 2 really good games, and you've solidified yourself as a really your NFL potential has been reached, and people are going to covet that. So
yeah, Aaron Foster kicked around practice squads for a long time until he got his shot and then became a perennial 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah, and he was out of Tennessee, I do believe, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Coach, that was a good one. What do you have coming up on the call sheet this week, as well as your film room stuff and all the work you do for Pro Football Insiders?
Yeah, All 22 Tuesday here on my X account at KT Smith FFSN. We have a lot of video breakdowns. I did one on Arthur Smith's play calling and looking at run schemes, how the outside zone scheme is really just taking off all throughout the NFL. Teams that use it well. Detroit Lions and Kansas City Chiefs, man, both put on a outside zone clinic on Sunday night. And then on our Call Sheet podcast, Wednesdays, our whiteboard show with Coach Frank Lasasso. Friday, Hot Route with Pez.
All right. Love it. Make sure you check out all of his work at ProFootballInsiders.com. If you want our Steelers coverage, check us out wherever you get your podcast. Steel Curtain Network, that's all you have to do. All social media platforms, as well as SteelCurtainNetwork.com. Make sure you check it out. But, Coach, thanks for your time. We'll talk next week. Take it easy.